Hello. Welcome back to my channel. I need to move my chair. Okay, that's better. So today we're going to talk about five-ish things that no one will tell you about moving, or I should say living in Colorado. And I just subbed the word moving because I'm realizing this video is mostly intended for people who aren't that familiar with Colorado and who are thinking about moving here. I fully expect that my fellow Coloradans will watch this and chime in, which I totally welcome. So if there's anything that I miss in terms of things that we don't often talk about living in Colorado, then please in the comments below, let me know what those things are. And speaking of just random channel things, if you have just found me, if you're new to my channel, I would love if you would like this video and subscribe. I'm a small channel and I would love to keep growing. So I so appreciate all of the love and support. So as we're jumping into this, I want to give a little precursor that most of the things I'm talking about in this video are about the Front Range. So most people, when they're moving to Colorado, they're moving to somewhere along the Front Range. So that's Fort Collins, Boulder, Denver, Colorado Springs. Those are the main metro areas along the Front Range. People don't usually move to Eastern Colorado. It's like basically just Kansas Part 2 that no one asked for. And it's also not super common that people move to the Western Slope because it's just sort of random wilderness. And it's really awesome. I mean, people move here to be close to that stuff, but people don't usually move to the Western Slope. So with that being said, that leads me to my very first point, and that is that Colorado is surprisingly diverse, both in terms of landscape, ecosystem, and in culture. For example, a lot of people who are really new to Colorado or are not as familiar with Colorado, when they first come here, they'll land at DIA in Denver and they'll be like, where are the mountains? Because they think that Colorado is just nothing but mountains. Like that's just all it is and you're just coming and you're landing in mountains or something. And that's just not the case. Because as you just saw in my little map that I put so much detail in, as you can see, the eastern part of Colorado is very flat. It's very plainsy and kind of farmy. And then to the west, that's where we have our beautiful Rocky Mountains. And then as you travel north to south of Colorado, there's very different cultural pockets of both political culture and then even just like general, the way people interact with each other. It can kind of change as you make your way up I-25 all the way from the south down in Pueblo and then make your way up to Fort Collins in the north near Wyoming. For example, Denver and Boulder tend to be very progressive and more liberal. And then Colorado Springs and even Fort Collins, but Fort Collins maybe less so these days, are known for being much more conservative. So that's why Colorado is so famous for being a purple state and for being a swing state, in that politically, based on whatever might be going on, we can constantly be flipping from being a blue state to being a red state because we are so diverse in our beliefs kind of all across the state, depending on where you go. And it's not that all that stuff is like a secret, it's just that people who aren't familiar with Colorado might not really be aware of how much of a diverse state it is. So if you're moving to Colorado, it's important to think about like what your values are, what you want, and then pick where you want to live according to all that fun stuff. But this leads me to my second point. It just got really dark. Okay, the light is back. There's weird stuff going on with the Colorado sky right now, and that's typical Colorado. Okay, second point. Colorado, though I just said it's diverse, I'm about to contradict myself because Colorado is an incredibly white state. We got whites on whites. And I bring this up delicately because I really personally believe that Colorado can really work on its diversity in that genre. Because places aren't just all white on accident. There's like underlying things that are going on that are causing the whiteness. And I think that as a state, we really need to address those things. One, it's super expensive in Colorado, almost wherever you go, although some places are cheaper than others. There also aren't a lot of typical working class or middle class jobs available in Colorado. It's becoming very much a tech hub, a hub for basically high industry. And although Coloradans are very proud of that, there's also some just weirdness underneath that why can't those places like tech hubs hire more ethnically diverse populations? So the last thing I'll say about this, because I know I've probably low-key triggered you, but it's not that other races besides white people just don't live in Colorado. I just decided to look it up, and according to the most recent census data available, Colorado is technically about 85% white. It's just that the other ethnicities that do live here tend to be kind of marginalized. They become kind of invisible, particularly our Latino population. It's just something we could work on in terms of getting a little bit more diverse and maybe being a little more inclusive to the ethnicities that are here that don't really get seen, or they don't feel as valued maybe. Okay, so triggered, we're moving on to something everyone can agree on, and that's the weather. So my third point about Colorado is that the winters here really aren't that bad. And I say this because often when I travel to other states or to other places and they know I'm from Colorado, they'll be like, oh, well, you're from Colorado, so you're so used to the cold. You're used to all that winter stuff. And the truth is, it really doesn't get that cold in Colorado, at least compared to like our Midwestern friends. Like, it's not like the kind of cold you might get in like Minnesota or Wisconsin. It obviously does snow here and it does get colder, but it's like we say, it's a dry cold. Like in the summer, we have a dry heat, and in the summer it's a dry cold. And the temperatures, though they can get low, they usually don't stay that low for that long. So a typical Colorado snow, especially when you're living, again, in the Front Range, is it'll snow for a day, and then within a couple days, the sun comes out again and it melts all the snow. And then it snows again, and then the sun comes out and melts the snow. So we kind of have that pattern. And then occasionally we'll have really cold days, but it's really not that bad. So speaking of the weather, that brings me to my fourth point, and that is, even though it's not humid, it's the dryness that we get here that's just all year round, in the summer, it can be surprisingly buggy sometimes, especially if you live anywhere near any sort of water feature, whether it's like a man-made pond or a river or something. Like, it can get really mosquito-y. And also we have ticks, and I mention that because, I mean, everywhere I think has ticks, but in Colorado in particular this year, we have noticed that the tick season has been a little bit worse. Like, more dogs have been getting ticks and humans, and it's just not super fun. So just something to be aware of, that even though it's not like super humid and wet, there still are bugs, and it's kind of annoying sometimes. Not the biggest deal in the world, but I just thought I would mention it since we're talking about things that we don't often mention. Okay, here is my fifth, technically last point to make today that is hopefully pretty valuable to anyone watching I almost said movie, this isn't a movie, who's watching this video and is thinking about moving to Colorado. So Colorado has one of the highest state income taxes in the country, maybe even the highest, maybe not the highest, but definitely in like the top 3 of state income tax rates. So when you move here and you technically become a resident and start paying Colorado state taxes, expect to have a bit more taken out of your paycheck to go towards your state taxes than you might be used to, especially if you're coming from a state like Texas, where there are 0 state income taxes. The payoff for this, though, is that Colorado tends to have pretty good services in terms of like healthcare services and unemployment services for people who really need them. We're a state that just tends to offer a lot for people who just need services. Or I should really say government assistance. It's not just like random services, but when you need government assistance, Colorado's stepping in for you. So if the state income thing bothers you, then yeah, something to consider. If you don't want to live in a place that has high state income tax, then maybe don't move to Colorado. If you don't care, then awesome. So I know technically that was supposed to be the end, but I've thought of one more that is also, I think, kind of important. And that is, if you do move to Colorado, you're gonna have a really hard time living anywhere else after your experience living in Colorado. And it's hard to explain why that is. I mean, obviously the reason you're watching this video in the first place is because you feel a draw to Colorado. And then once you get here, people just love it. I mean, there's so much to offer in terms of like the outdoorsy lifestyle, just all kinds of cool stuff. And also, if you have other things you want to know about, you can check out my other video. It's specifically about moving to Boulder, but a lot of the advice could maybe be applied to Colorado in general. So yeah, if you move here, you might have a really hard time living somewhere else afterwards because you're going to be constantly comparing the experience to how great it was living in Colorado. I so hope that you enjoyed this video. You'll notice I didn't mention a lot of the obvious stuff people talk about when they talk about living in Colorado. I didn't talk about how expensive, actually I did talk about how expensive it is, but in passing. And I also didn't talk about the traffic. People love to mention that the traffic is bad, and it's really not that bad. Like, I've been traveled enough that I know what traffic is like in other metropolitan areas, and Denver in particular. Like, there's times you will get stuck in traffic, but it's nothing like LA or like Austin in Texas or the East Coast, pretty much every city on the East Coast. It's not really like that. So, so I'm not mentioning traffic because it's not that bad. Get over it. So please like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in my next video.